Hey, it's A Frisch with A Frisch Perspective here. In this video, I wanted to follow up from my last video where I talked about Pastor PAWLOWSKI being arrested up in Calgary in Canada. And this is an interesting situation just to see the strong reactions people have about this. And I can tell it's obviously something people feel strongly about because the video garnered a lot of views in a short amount of time. And there have been a lot of comments on this video. And that's actually really good in my perspective, because I really like to see people actually discussing these things, voicing their opinions. So I encourage you, even on this video, to voice your opinion. That's really one of the points of this channel. The goals of this channel is to try to garner discussion and interaction on different topics. Now, I realize when it comes to something like this, we tend to have very polarized positions, and this is something that I observed, and I really just wanted to point out here, that there are some people that are looking at Pastor PAWLOWSKI like he's a hero, he's amazing, everything he's doing here is perfect. There are other people who look at Pastor PAWLOWSKI as kind of a villain, that he's really rebelling and doing something that's not good. And you can see that exemplified here just in these comments that I have up. This first one here says, "This man has got guts and he stands up for what he believes in." So this is that perspective that Pastor PAWLOWSKI is a hero. Then a little further down here, it says, "Good, he deserved this. You don't have the right to disobey the law just because you don't agree with the law. Read and take Romans 13 to heart." So there you see the contrast that I'm talking about. Some who look at him as a hero and others who look at him as more of a villain doing the wrong thing. And I find that very fascinating because we're really talking about the same man in the same situation, and yet you have very different views. And one of the reasons for that is that we do have different perspectives, politically speaking, and we also have different perspectives in terms of what we believe the Bible is telling us to do. So as you saw here, some are saying, well, Romans 13 tells us that we need to follow what the government is saying. Others, however, and I would tend to lean more this way, would say that, well, the government is something we should honor, but the government actually has a constitution or a charter, and it needs to follow its own laws, its own groundwork and basis as a government. It needs to be true to itself, in other words. And so when we see government saying you have freedom of religion built into the system, but then they're infringing on freedom of religion, that's actually a problem. It's not really honoring to the whole government system that's set up. So it's not necessarily being disobedient or bucking against government to try to hold government accountable to its own system and its own laws. So that's another way of looking at this situation. But people obviously have strong opinions. One comment, though, I really wanted to make, a thought that I had on Pastor PAWLOWSKI, is that when it comes to people, I think we tend to want to put things in clear-cut boxes. We either want to say someone is great or we want to say someone is horrible, especially when they're taking a really strong stand. But it got me to thinking about how when we look at the Bible and we actually see different people in the Bible and you look at Scripture, you can't really always put people in boxes. So for example, if you look at King David and you ask that question, is he a hero or is he a villain? Which box do we put him in? In reality, King David obviously was a great man in many ways, used of God in a great way, even called a man after God's own heart. But was he perfect? Absolutely not. And there are some things that he did, some behaviors that he exhibited, some things that he got involved with that you would say really make him a villain in a sense. And so we just have to recognize that even though we want to put things in very clear-cut terms in this world, in reality, humans are flawed. So there's a lot that could be said about that, but I think with Pastor PAWLOWSKI, I think we have to realize, obviously, he's not a perfect person. And, I understand why some people disagree with the tactics that he's been using and the approach that he's taking. On the other hand, I totally understand where he's coming from because he grew up in a communist background in Poland years ago. And so I think that colors a lot of how he looks at things and how he approaches things. And so I think in some ways you can see what he's trying to do and why it's good, but does that make him perfect in everything he's doing? No. And so I just think we have to be careful. I know we want to put people up as heroes, perfect, or we want to paint them the other color as complete villains. But in reality, it's not always that simple when it comes to people. So I just wanted to add to the discussion a little bit. I think, again, it's very understandable what he's doing, why he's been doing what he's doing, but it's just interesting to see the polarized views. I'd like to hear if anybody kind of looks at it the way that I do and sees humans as being good and being used as a good force in this world, but that doesn't mean that they're perfect. It doesn't mean that everything that they do is good. And so we have to be careful, we don't just take extreme views on how we look at people. So I'd be interested to hear what you think about all this, but thank you so much for taking a look at this situation with me some more and listening to some of my thoughts from a Frisch perspective.